And because of my manufacturing experience, I was like, we're selling this whatever charging cable that glows for, I don't know, $13, and we were buying it for like 6 or 7. I'm like, that costs a buck 20 at most, right? And so I was like, why don't we just go directly to the manufacturer, buy it direct, private label, slap our brand, because these are no name brands anyway, and basically just get another 50 to 60 basis points on margin.
The following is part of a 2-episode pilot as R&D to hopefully get my community of executives, founders, and investors excited about a potential full season of episodes chatting with unique leaders and getting a different, more holistic take on their approach to life, leadership, and success. Today, I'm talking about everything from balance to citrus-flavored Amazonian ants with Ian Young, a longtime growth and marketing executive with companies like Tonal, Parachute, The Black Tux, and more. Let's jump right in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Level 380. We are on podcast Duh. I should say it in Portuguese, actually. Dois. And I have an amazing guest today, Ian Young. Ian was previously the SVP of Revenue at Tonal. He's also held multiple leadership roles in various major e-commerce companies, including the Black Tux, as well as Parachute, all very nice premium companies as well. And Ian and I have actually known each other for a few years, and we met at a couple of industry dinners, and we instantly connected, I feel, because Ian has always just struck me as someone who's very authentic, has awesome energy, and is currently on a career break, learning new skills and going on fun trips to Bali. So I'm excited to sit down and talk to him and reflect a little bit on his career journey and things that get him excited. So welcome. And welcome, Ian.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So I think, why don't we, I gave a little bit of your bio, but I'd love to hear it from you, especially just kind of maybe start us from the beginning and kind of where you're from and kind of how you got started.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So fun fact, and I use this in Two Truths and a Lie.
Yeah.
I was born in São Paulo, Brazil. So born and raised in Brazil, fluent in Portuguese, hence the dois.
Yes.
And I don't obviously don't look Brazilian. Don't have an accent.
Could have had me fooled.
Yeah, I know. I can't even fake it. I can't do accents. I lived in Hong Kong in England for like 8 years. Can't do an English accent to save my life. And it would be such a useful party trick if I could fake something. But
you're going to need to work on that.
I'm too authentic. No. So, but yeah, so went to college in Chicago, studied industrial engineering, got into engineering, not because I had a master plan, but because I was good at math, as most Asians are, and figured it'd be just something to do.
And were your, sorry for asking so many questions, but I'm curious. Were your parents in engineering?
My dad was an industrial engineer as well.
Gotcha.
So there's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I actually landed on industrial engineering as like the last resort after having gone through every other discipline, like chemical engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering.
Yeah. Is there something about industrial engineering that you feel like was the best of the bunch for you?
For me, yeah, because it's the least engineering of the engineers.
Okay.
It's the imaginary engineers, as people are wont to call. But it was more like I had already done so much of the core that I wanted to do something else, and so I tacked on economics as a double major to like be more business oriented.
Yeah.
And not just give up on like 2 years of hardcore engineering classes.
I see. Yeah. And how did you like make your way from Brazil to Chicago?
So I went to American and international schools, all my formal education, hence no accent.
Which I'm super jealous of, because I do feel like whenever and maybe I'm biased, but whenever I meet people who have kind of had schooling at a lot of international schools and have traveled a lot through their childhood and their like college years, like they tend to have a very like broad and cultured worldview, or just like even just a different perception on things. And so I think that's very cool that you got to do that.
I do feel very fortunate to have that as part of my I mean, to your point, it's like you're exposed to so many other different perspectives, and I think those different perspectives help shape how you see the world, and the more perspectives you can incorporate into your worldview, the more holistic you can be.
Yeah.
But and so having gone through that, it was always sort of my ambition to go to a quote unquote good school.
Asian ambition.
Yeah, well, I mean,
actually a lot of kids' ambition. Actually, I shouldn't say that.
And I actually think very differently about this now, but like as defined by U.S. News and World Report, like the ranking, it's like right. And Northwestern and Penn were the two sort of the highest rated schools that I got into. But I really just the Big Ten school, having access to like major Division I athletics. Not that I would ever play. I played basketball in high school, but I was nowhere near good enough to play at that level. But just having that experience of sort of like that collegiate athletics experiences, going to games and stuff like that,
Yeah.
really appealed to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and so ended up going there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think I applied to only Ivy Leagues.
I applied to a whole bunch of Ivy Leagues. I early decision Stanford, and was a quick rejection. Like
Yeah.
And yeah, I applied to like 13 and got rejected by 10 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Or 9 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, college is not an indicator. So you went to Northwestern and then you studied industrial engineering.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you kind of stumbled on that a little bit.
I stumbled on that, and I mean, 17-year-old, who knows what you're doing?
Yeah.
You're just kind of trying to figure life out. I didn't know at all what I wanted to do. But I was on this path, and I got an internship at Ford right after my freshman year, and got in another one my sophomore year, and just kind of my first job out of college was with Ford, and got on this like automotive manufacturing career path, which is totally different than what I do now.
Yeah.
But that was something that I got into their management training program out of school and did that for 2 years.
Yeah.
So funny story, not funny, but I think formative to my experience. My first day on the job was in a stamping plant in Chicago Heights, so south side of Chicago, like really sort of rough neighborhood. And I'm pulling up into the parking lot, and I'm about to take a left turn into the parking lot, and right next to me there's a guy just taking a swig out of a 40 while he's smoking on a blunt.
Oh my God.
And like he's pulling into the parking lot too. I'm like, huh. And this is like 5:30 in the morning.
Okay.
I show
That's
up.
a sign.
That's a sign. And I pull in, I show up to work, and there's like all of this safety stuff going on because a few days prior someone was killed on the job, like industrial accident, like someone got crushed by like a 20-ton die, like crushed a man.
God.
And that was sort of like dirty, like really industrial, like hazardous kind of thing, which is very different than like just the college sort of bubble that I was in.
Right.
But I think it was a really good experience because like that's life, right? Like life is not isolated to sort of academia and like white collar tech kind of like bubbles that I think a lot of people in our industry experience. And that was my life for like 13 years.
Yeah. Wait, but did the guy that pulled up next to you, did anything happen?
I-
Or is he just a part of the
That was
visual?
it was just a visual of like I remember looking over.
No, that do something.
No, that dude, I don't know what he did. I was
yeah. But it's just like it's the vision in your mind in terms of like your experience and
and that was sort of as part of that training program. I was a production line supervisor for the UAW union sort of production and skilled trades.
Gotcha.
But that's sort of like the population.
Yeah.
Some of the population. I don't want to generalize.
Yeah. Is it a common, I don't know the space very well, but is it a common like thing for if you study industrial engineering to go into a management training type program?
Yes, but not so much for manufacturing. A lot of my, I guess, people like that studied with me went the management consulting investment banking route. Which I applied for but did not get. So that was sort of just the path that I started on.
Okay.
But like, again, going back to sort of that experience, I think was formative because it allowed me to have direct sort of people management training and like experience.
Yeah.
Like as a 21-year-old. And the sort of peers that went the management consulting investment banking route, they were just doing PowerPoint decks.
I mean, it feels like that's especially tough because it's hard to build that type of authority when you're younger.
Yeah, and with people that are deeply distrustful and not down for having a snot-nosed kid telling them what to do. But like that's the school of hard knocks that you go through.
So then what happened from there? So you were doing that for a while?
I did that for 2 years. That was the length of the program. And at the end of that program, I decided to move back to Brazil to be closer to family.
Yeah.
And I joined a small speaker manufacturer called Audilab.
Okay.
And the Audilab made the cheap speakers that would come, like when a car comes out of the factory, there's like those cheap speakers that like sound terrible, but because they're cheap.
Yeah.
That was, it was a business that.
So it's not like for Audis. It's called Audilab.
No. It's more audio.
Audio lab.
I think the URL was taken. Yeah. Someone already had the URL, so we had to like truncate it.
That's funny.
but yeah, no, they were quality speakers in that they didn't break.
Yeah.
And they were very cheap. And it was a business that was able to be successful. And I joined as head of production and supply chain, and sort of took on more and more responsibility. The business grew, and
Okay, I can kind of start to see a pattern here. There's like a physical supply chain management component going on.
yeah, I think the common thread is I just like to be helpful, and however I can help a business in whatever like things that go through a life cycle of a business. If I can be helpful, I choose to, and I've been able to be successful in that.
Yeah. Okay, so take us to how does this translate to
Yeah.
kind of
So fast forward
yeah
10 years, and business grew. I took on more
Oh
responsibility.
wow, you were there for 10 years?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I eventually became president of that business,
Wow.
and we were had 70% of market share in Brazil.
Guys, this is what being helpful does.
Yeah, and we were
10 years now.
we were global GM's global supplier of the year for 3 years in a row. Just we were doing really, really well. And we sold that business to a Chinese multinational strategic competitor. They just kind of wanted to enter the market, and so bought us out. And so when that transaction happened, it sort of gave me an opportunity to reevaluate. And so I call it my quarter life crisis, because I didn't know if I wanted to do that for the rest of my life, right? Going back to how I got onto that path. I got onto that path as a 17-year-old kid who didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah. So you're like, at that point, you're like
30.
30. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Good time to reevaluate.
Yeah. 20. No, it's 30. Yeah, 30,
yeah.
31.
Yeah.
And so it was just kind of the time where I was like, is this what I want to do? Is like, what do I want to do going forward? And staying in manufacturing had some things that just didn't appeal to me. And namely, it was manufacturing is more and more, like as a future trend, going to be done in low cost countries. Like labor cost being a huge component for manufacturing. I didn't want to live where manufacturing was. And that, and plus like the things that interested me was growth and like sort of the up and to the right. And in manufacturing, to be successful at it is really about sort of controlling costs and being disciplined with how you operate and efficiencies and whatnot. And so we had this, this is when I met my wife. Actually, I met my wife trying to sell Audilab. Not who bought Audilab was not that company, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
But when the transaction happened, I had some flexibility, and knowing that I wanted to get into sort of high growth industries, San Francisco was kind of the place to be. And so we moved to San Francisco.
Any challenges?
Oh, absolutely.
To San Francisco, because you were moving from Brazil.
Moving from Brazil, yeah. With 2 kids, no jobs, and just kind of.
Oh, you moved before you found. Yeah, so you went there and you were like, I'm gonna find a role.
I'm gonna change geographies.
Yeah.
I'm gonna change industries.
Wow.
And I'm gonna change or try and change functional specialties. I was just like the trifecta of like, how can I make this difficult for myself?
Yeah. Transitioning is a fun thing to do.
Yeah, and it's easy to look back now and talk about it, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So I was like,
it's pretty ballsy for you to go do that. So how did you sell it?
Sell it to,
or like how did you was it easy for you to find the next role, even though it's sort of a pivot?
Yeah. I mean, we moved and I started applying, and I took the first job that gave me a job.
Yeah. And this was this Black Tux?
No, this was Touch of Modern.
Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, more e-commerce. Yes.
More e-commerce. Yeah. So Touch of Modern, flash sales site for those who don't know, started in the sort of gilt rue la la era of e-commerce, and I joined as
I'm thinking you made me think about that era of e-commerce and to what extent it exists today.
Yeah, well,
not exists, but like where it is in the flow of.
I think it was definitely a learning opportunity for the industry. Like flash sales. Had an interesting pitch in terms of asset light business. You can just cross dock and whatnot, but
what'd you say?
Cross dock. So like you don't hold inventory because it's flash sales. You just kind of, people buy it and then you order only what, and so you just ship it. Gotcha. But it was something that I think the industry learned that no, it's not an easy way out. You still have to pay for acquisition costs. You still have to pay for all the other things of a business that I think today, like most people are pretty savvy that e-commerce and DTC is not a business model. It's just a channel. It's a sales channel.
Right.
So yeah, I was their head of operations. but and I was responsible for just getting like the sales on the website and sort of placing POs and orchestrating the whole logistics of getting people to fulfill their orders.
Gotcha. And then how did you transition from operations to like revenue and growth and those
Yeah,
areas?
so that goes into the trying to be helpful.
We're gonna name that. That's a call.
Yeah.
Parentheses.
Yeah. There was a business challenge where because we're essentially a middleman with these vendors, margins were not where they needed to be. And a lot of the things that we sold were not the highest value, kind of like just there was a margin opportunity that we thought that we could sort of capture by doing it private label. And because of my manufacturing experience, I was like, we're selling this whatever charging cable that glows for, I don't know, $13, and we were buying it for like 6 or 7. I'm like, that costs $1.20 at most, right? And so I was like, why don't we just go directly to the manufacturer, buy it direct, private label, slap our brand, because these are no-name brands anyway, and basically just get another 50 to 60 basis points on margin.
Yeah.
Because we're selling for like 20, 25.
Right.
And I did, and so they were like, go for it, go figure it out. I think I had 1 or 2 other people that like I kind of roped in to help me out in this venture.
Yeah.
And we were able to launch 7 different brands with I think 13 SKUs each. Each brand was doing about 7 figures of revenue and at like 70-80% margin. So that was sort of a win that got me some credibility to like, yeah, maybe you should like expand your remit to stuff outside of just operations. And that got me on sort of a BD kind of strategic initiative track.
And I think there's several patterns I feel like that are there, but if you were to like kind of look back as to like the outside of being helpful, like some of the things that you feel like you were naturally more attuned to than others, that helped you kind of move forward, what do you think those were?
I think innate curiosity and a deep desire to just want to do things more efficiently. So going back to the whole industrial engineering thing, the whole concept of industrial engineering is just efficiency, right? Like how can you get more output for the same amount of input? And that is actually something that spoke to me as a kid, because as a kid, I was just really, really lazy.
Some of the best engineers are just the most lazy.
Well, and I think that's actually the superpower if you can sort of be mindful of it and cultivate it, right? So like if you're just lazy and you just don't do anything, like not a good life choice.
Right.
But I think if you can become a high functioning lazy person, that actually ends up being a superpower. And the way it manifests for me, especially with industrial engineering, sort of formal education of it, and economics, resource allocation, you get resources, you have a finite amount of resources. How can you get the maximum output from that fixed constraint of resources?
Right.
And when I see a business problem, I see it as, okay, there's constrained resources. There's only so much cash. There's only so many head count. There's only so, like, whatever the constraints are. Is there a creative way to like do something different that allows for more output? And that was the thing with private label. And then the big thing, inflection point that sort of set my career towards this marketing growth, whatever, was another challenge that business had, which was customer acquisition. So Touch of Modern was like, they grew to about 100 million GMV on the back of Facebook. Like this was early Facebook, arbitrage, like controlling the levers, changing like super granular like campaign settings. Super efficient. They were one of the first advertisers to take advantage of that. Grew super fast.
Right.
Like any arbitrage opportunity, eventually it gets more expensive, and they couldn't sustain that. And so CACs went up. They couldn't sort of had that challenge where it was just deeply unprofitable to sustain that level of run rate. And so one of the projects I was sort of tasked with figuring out is there another channel that we can lean on for customer acquisition that isn't digital, but is there another opportunity to grow?
Okay, the $1 million question.
$1 million question. And so in talking to just, again, insanely curious, just understanding where other channels and other companies had some success. And direct response TV was one of those hypotheses that we had to test out. And this was sort of linear TVs just bought on remnant. You can buy her super cheap, and it could be effective. And this is also, I think, during a time when the industry and like all this like people who know, and like if anyone were to give a future trend of like TV's dead, and it's true, there was declining viewership in TV. Advertisers were saying that's an old channel, you need to invest in the future, and that's sort of digital. They're right. Just 4 years or 5 years too early.
Mm.
Right? It wasn't until the pandemic where like viewership actually.
Yeah.
And so there was a period where it worked very well for Touch of Modern. So what we did, I was given a $50,000 budget.
Yeah.
Like, go figure it out and see how that could work. $50,000 is not a much. That's not a very big budget. Like, it's a lot of money for like you and I as like individuals, but like for companies,
for ads and
it's not a lot. And to get a media plan in place, I basically had to allocate like 45,000 of that just for the media plan. And so I had $5,000 to shoot the ad, to set up the attribution, to like do everything else. And I spent about 4,000 of that 5,000 to rent an Airbnb as a location for the shoot.
Yeah.
And
did you just do one campaign, or was it like
it was like one ad?
Yeah.
One 30-second
one ad.
It was one. It was not a campaign. Like I wasn't getting.
Yeah.
It was one ad.
Yeah.
I spent another $800 in craft services for like the team and like
yeah.
So it was super scrappy. And the hypothesis worked.
Huh. And so I want to dig into that because I feel like, I think curiosity and optimization, I think, are like clearly patterns. But I also think like it takes a certain type of ingenuity to say, okay, like I think maybe TV is going to work. Why do you think at the time you felt TV might work?
Going back to the whole like hypothesis, like and this is something I think a lot of growth practitioners get wrong, is you got to test. Yes, you got to test. But like test is having an actual hypothesis that is informed by some prior art or some like first principles thinking.
Yes.
And then you validate it.
Yeah.
Not you just throw shit against the wall and like, see if it works.
Yes. It's a very common challenge, I think.
And so the thesis was there's this arbitrage opportunity. Advertisers were fleeing it, driving costs down more than what was actually happening because there's at that time still a massive audience in linear TV. Can
you tell me a little bit more about the thought process behind what was the ad and like, why you thought it would work?
Yeah, no, the ad. So Touch of Modern as a business was just sort of flash sales, right?
Yeah.
And so things that had worked really well for us on the digital front was just showing cool stuff and showing 70% off. That all of our sort of best performing Facebook ads had that common theme of we had a saying, if it glows, it goes. Like basically just shiny stuff that like levitates or glows or just sort of really kitschy kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then 70% off. And so the thesis was we're going to take these Facebook ads, cut it together into an ad and show it on TV instead of on Facebook. And that's what we did. We just took cool product, put it into a cool location, and it was like it was in Marin County, so it was like a nice mansion in Marin.
Yeah. Like
really modern sort of architectural and designed space with just kind of cool products around. And we actually used very little of that footage and used mostly B-roll from our vendors.
No way. That's funny.
I mean, just lesson learned. You really can't get much.
Well, nowadays you don't even need a mansion.
Yeah, that's true with AI.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's more like production value in this podcast than us shooting that TV ad. It was really.
You just give me $50,000 and we'll be good.
it was really rough. It's cringy to like.
Yeah.
I think it's been scrubbed from the internet now, so I don't know if you can see it, but it was on Touch of Modern's YouTube page for a while, and it was just super cringe.
So when you say industry talk, were people, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I kind of want to like I want to like hone in on this one thing. Like, what were people saying that? Were they saying like, oh, we should, TV is untapped, let's go move in that direction? Or were they saying like, TV is so tapped, I'm not focused there, and you were like, maybe we should?
It was the latter for sure.
Oh, interesting.
I think industry talk, and that's where understanding where the business was. Like, if you just follow what everyone says to do, you're going to get what everyone else gets as results. Right. At that, what the business needed at the time was something materially better than average. We couldn't succeed just being average.
You had to find a new market to play in a way.
We had to do something different, which is how Touch of Modern got to where they were, was doing something different, which was Facebook. Once everyone caught on, then sort of it became average.
You have to constantly be going to the next channel, because once it gets saturated, it gets expensive, and then it becomes lower, diminishing returns, and you kind of have to find the next thing.
Especially as a startup. I'd say as a mature business, once you get to a certain scale, you have like competitive moats. Like Nike or like bigger brands, they have their brand to lean on. They have a natural amount of equity that they can lean on.
Well, and they can also control the saturated market because they'll just spend more.
Exactly. Right?
Everyone else gets crowded out.
Exactly. They have competitive advantages that a poorly funded startup
Yeah.
will never have.
Well, I think that's also one of the things I feel like, I resonate with, because I think that, one, I think it's really important to be resourceful when you are at a smaller company that doesn't have, I mean, like if you have the luxury of like every best person and all the money in the world, like, that's a lot clearer and obvious. But when you have to be resourceful, and then you have to get creative. And then when you have to get creative, then you're starting to pay attention to like you have to actually pay attention to what are the things that like may be new signals that other people might not be seeing.
I mean, it's cliche, but necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And as a startup, it's necessary to be
Yeah.
different and creative in a good way.
Right.
Where in a bigger company, and sort of later on in my career, we've had sort of mega influencers, like famous basketball players on our website, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Was a luxury that just didn't exist at Touch of Modern. And
Gotcha.
that was the thesis. And when everyone was saying Zig, TV's dead,
Yes.
there was one or two voices that actually shared like, no, like you should actually see if that could be. And the one or two voices that said to Zag is what I paid attention to. And it worked.
Yeah. Amazing. So I want to kind of take us to like present.
Yeah.
So I think, well, before we actually go to present, I guess I would say, presently, looking back, were there any other sort of like aha moments in this trajectory? Like, I think that you mentioned, obviously sort of this like, break, moving to San Francisco, wanting to transition to more of a growth phase for the next chapter in your career. And finding this knack of like, like transitioning from like an operational space to a growth space because the need was there. Do you feel like shifting from company to company, because you've been at several companies, like, was there like a moment that caused you to make these moves and or sort of a realization about what you wanted?
Yeah, I think all of these things were kind of me figuring out what I wanted to do over the 4 decades of my life, and just having a hypothesis and seeing if that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then learning that, no, that's actually not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So going into high growth, Touch of Modern was a great business. I loved the product. I was actually one of their biggest customers. I used that employee discount to the max. But it wasn't sort of super high growing. I was able to help stabilize the business because we were losing a lot of money, and
my God.
we're no longer losing money.
There's a bug. I'm not going to drink on that side.
More protein, it's fine.
That's the Brazilian.
Yeah,
Do you eat bugs?
Yeah, ants. Okay, so total aside, there's an ant from the Amazon that tastes like
Oh my God, can you believe I literally thought Amazon, like I can order ants off. Okay, sorry. From the Amazon.
From the Amazon, the river in the but these little ants, if you eat them, they taste like lemon. It's like super like citrusy.
Interesting.
It's delicious.
Okay.
So going back to the prep questions that you said, like the TV thing, and then where you were asking in terms of the different sort of companies I went through, they were all intentional in what I was trying to achieve in each one. And there's lessons that I've learned having gone through that.
Yeah.
And so like, I guess tying back to the present, I have the confidence that I guess you're picked up on because I've learned from these lessons of having all these different experiences. And that's something that by having gone through that, different than if you've been in one company for 9 years or 20 years, because like a lot of people in the manufacturing space stay in the same company for their entire careers.
Yeah.
Is you don't have different perspectives. And that perspective has further refined what I want and what I don't want to do with my life.
So let's talk about those experiences a little bit in terms of what were some of the things that you feel like maybe each of the different companies gave you in terms of experience and what you took away from it?
And so rewinding 10 years ago, I had misconceptions about what a job or what a company was and what was it like to be in. And I think that's actually kind of social media in a nutshell is you have only the rosy picture if you're from the outside, right? And so you see these glamorous lives of investment bankers with like massive expense accounts and just like crazy big bonuses. And you miss the reality of like, it's mind-numbing work. Like you're just excruciating over PowerPoint decks, especially a low-level analyst. Like it's horrible. It's a horrible job. Joining a hyper-growth, like hockey stick startup from the outside is like, oh yeah, like you're going to be a billionaire overnight. And like, why wouldn't you want to do that? It's so exciting. And that was sort of what enticed me to go to Simple Habit, which was a meditation app. I left Touch of Modern, which is a great became a stable business, profitable, still growing. I had built a lot of sort of social capital and equity in that business, and like was respected and enjoyed what I did with the people I worked with.
Yeah.
And I gave it up to chase sort of the startup dream of.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Because Simple Habit was kind of taking off at the
Yeah.
time. Okay.
So
did they come for you?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were actually the top search result for meditation apps in the Apple and Google Play stores, above Calm and Headspace.
Yeah. I see. Wow.
For a little bit. And oversubscribed Series A, like first executive marketing hire. Like that was just like I want to chase the high, right?
You know what's so funny? It's hilarious. I thought you were like, oh, I went to Simple Habit because I burned out and I wanted to meditate. And you're like, no, I want to jump on a Series A.
Yeah. It is ironic that the products that should be about health and wellness actually contributed to my worst mental and physical health of my life. So talk about balance.
Yeah.
There's a weird corollary there.
Self-care is a hardcore job.
I'm
like looking at you.
Yeah, I did believe in meditation, and I had sort of learned about the benefits when I was at Touch of Modern, and it kind of on the surface felt like, oh, I can do social good, I can do something that I'm passionate about. I still believe in meditation and mindfulness practice, as like there's a lot of science behind it, so it was good, and the hockey stick growth.
Yeah.
So I took the plunge. The lesson learned from that experience is there's some of the things, especially when you look at product analytics, you have to be really, really cautious about when things are too good to be true. They usually are.
They usually are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the deep into the product analytics, there was stuff that looked amazing. That's why everything looked great. It just wasn't real. So people love to use a product. People just didn't want to pay for it when they knew they were paying for a meditation app.
Yeah. That's interesting. Why do you think Calm and Headspace can, charge they're like $99 of whatever?
Well,
it's expensive.
So they were earlier. I mean, people are willing to pay for it.
Yes.
But in an environment when Calm and Headspace exist, and there's another app that's charging for that service, it's just really hard to compete, especially when that product wasn't as fully mature and full featured.
You know what's interesting? I think that actually I get why it's paid, but I think I personally would never pay for a meditation app. I will buy a meditation app I just bought one for my brother. It was his birthday. But like, it's really hard for me to spend on like mental stuff.
Yeah, it's I mean, no judgment. And I think Calm actually grew because of sleep stories. And so it was a sleep use case.
Which feels more scientific. And so you kind of, I mean, meditation is scientific, but sleep feels like necessity.
Yeah. It's an aspirin. No, it's a pain point as an aspirin, like solves a specific pain point.
It's
rather than
pain point.
than a vitamin that's good for you. Right.
Correct.
So
yes,
people like to pay for.
Yes. Which is, by the way, I think a really good analogy that I heard. I don't know, maybe it was you, but it was somebody had said, it was a vitamin pain, not a medical pain. And I was just like, oh yeah, that's a good way to refer to the nice to haves.
It was perceived as a nice to have.
Yeah.
And the thing that we couldn't get into is when there's actual like mental trauma and like trauma related pain. That's a whole other path that we weren't wanting to go. We wanted to stay on the more light consumer kind of like
right.
Didn't want to get into the heavily regulated like therapy side of the of where mental sort of mindfulness practice can be helpful. But you need to be serious about that.
So what else about the sort of the product analytics were maybe rosier than expected?
They're all the lessons of what to look out for. Poor data, unstructured data that was missing, like just reporting. The business was not looking at the right metrics. When they did look at the metrics, they were flawed because the data was of poor quality.
Yeah.
And it took a little bit of digging to just uncover what was going on.
Yeah.
And then once we found out what was going on, what the business needed was more product people, less growth, right? And so it was less about sort of me keeping a job just to help grow a business when it was a business that wasn't ready to get sort of gasoline poured on it. Right.
There needs to be like a level before you start to scale. It has to have that market fit, and it also has to like indicate that somebody's going to pay for it.
Exactly.
Then you can scale that thing.
Exactly. And so my contribution to that was take that $10 million you just raised, invest it in product.
Yeah.
Figure out product market fit.
Yeah.
Don't try and acquire users into a leaky bucket.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like there's a case to grow before you've found
Product market fit?
the monetization fit?
Yes, potentially.
Yeah.
If you have confidence that there's a path to monetization.
Yeah. Just depends on your risk level and
Yeah.
like your how certain you are that you can find it.
Yeah. And I think the thesis going into that, especially once we sort of evaluated where were the meditation apps that were getting monetized, it was more related to sleep than to actual mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
And so that business actually pivoted into sleep reset. So it's like clinically
it's
proven.
pivoted. Oh,
Yeah. So
okay. Are they on their next series? Actually, I don't know. But one of the things that always strikes me is that, and this is why I feel like fundamental thinking is so valuable, is that most of the time when you say the reason why something hits so hard after you like look at the data and you say, oh, well, we found this, it's very natural to be like, oh yeah, that would make sense. And so like having that thesis and then going to go look, it's just like, you almost want to prove yourself wrong, that it's not what you're believing. That like, maybe it's counterintuitive, but generally a lot of things are intuitive.
Yeah, I mean, Occam's razor, it's like there's simplicity in just the simplest answers is generally the right one.
Yeah. Wait, can you can you actually just like articulate Occam's razor, because I've heard of the model but I haven't actually looked into it.
It's just the simplest answer is usually the correct one, right? So like if you think about all the conspiracy theories that are going around in the world,
Yeah.
people are coming up with these convoluted
Yeah.
explanations for why something exists.
Yeah.
That generally it doesn't need to be that complicated.
Mhm.
And humans tend to overanalyze and create all these crazy things. And it's generally not true. And so I'm paraphrasing, but
Yeah.
like it's just my way of saying simple is usually better. And,
Yeah.
and if there's a simple explanation that
tend to err on the side of the simple explanation.
yeah, like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like KISS, like keep it simple, stupid. Just
Yeah.
keep it simple, right? Because if you add too much complexity, it's not helpful. And it's too hard to explain. It's generally going to be more flaws in logic and data, and just the simpler the better. Going back to my laziness, I don't want to think too hard. Just give me something short and sweet.
Yeah. It's definitely like a sort of I think I agree on the side of like the erring, because I think sometimes we complicate when there doesn't need to be complication. It's very natural. But I also think one of our biggest challenges is being able to take what is truly complex and simplifying it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we may oversimplify. So like it's a very difficult balance to strike.
Well, so that's where I'd say having different perspectives is where like diversity of thought, and it's important to have frameworks to simplify.
Yeah.
But you can't rely on only one, right? And so having multiple frameworks that you can lean on. And look at the same problem, or like this table, for example. If you look at it from one perspective, it looks rectangular. You look at another, it's like got this like curvature, right?
Yeah. Going back to like being schizo, like as an analogy, like I used to do a lot more fitness stuff, and like the fitness people would always have coaches, even though they like my coach would have a coach, and you're like, why do you need a coach? You are a fitness person. And the reality is it's just always very hard to see what you're in. And so they were like, well, I have a coach because I need somebody to like look at me objectively. And it's sometimes really hard for me to look at myself objectively. So I just need that. So even a fitness coach needs a coach. And so similarly for me, I think that like, being at a company for so long, I've had the benefit of having a lot of new people come in. And every time somebody new comes in, there is the annoying aspect where they ask all the same questions that I have to answer again. But then also there's always a sense of a new, fresh perspective. And like, even for me, I'll not, it's hard, but I take myself away from work and I come back and I have another fresh pair of eyes. I do things and I have sounding boards, and like Chase is a sounding board, because it's really hard to put yourself in the mindset of, well, if I were to say X, Y, and Z, like how would somebody take that and perceive that? And like, because it's like really hard to see both sides at one time, even though in reality, that person's seeing it for a split second and you're trying to guess what that split second feels like. And so you almost have to leave, come back, pretend you're them, and be like, split second, what do I feel?
Well, that's the benefit of mindfulness practice, right? It's like the whole point is separating yourself from you, right? And like trying to have like a third person perspective of the emotions you're feeling and how you're reacting to stimulus. Like, I mean, going to Tonal, we have amazing coaches who are experts in their field,
right?
And they're always learning too, right? And so as human beings, none of us are omniscient. None of us know everything about everything.
Yeah.
We are experts in a particular our life experience and where we choose to.
Exactly. That's the lens from which we see everything.
But life is more nuanced and complex, and there's always more to learn from anybody anywhere. Experts, newcomers, like it doesn't really matter. There's always something to learn from anywhere.
Yeah. And I think that's what's fascinating about, well, before I say that, I was going to say, you mentioned like sort of third person sort of perspective. And it's funny because I just like, we were talking a little bit about the fact, maybe before the lights were on, we were talking about how one of the things that the reason why this podcast is called Level 380 is because I think that if you are able to separate yourself and separate, you know, your consciousness from your experience, you can actually experience your life as if you're in a game. And just to be able to put a term to it, because sometimes it's like hard to explain third person perspective. You know, I kind of described it as player awareness, which is to realize that it is a game is actually the point. And once you realize that, then you can almost like relax a little bit and just play the game. And you know, but whenever you're playing, you know, it can be easy to get immersed and sucked in, and it's actually very natural to constantly have to be like, wait, where am I right now? You know, and constantly kind of like recalibrate, readjust. But the other thing that I was trying to say before that, you have to bring me back though, because I don't know where we landed before I went off on that tangent. What were we saying?
I don't remember.
See, that's how long our memories last.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
No, well, so I mean, so it wasn't what we were talking about, but you were like the whole concept of like just taking breaks and just like pausing.
Yeah.
That was sort of the theme of like every sort of gig that I had in every job and a sort of transition was an opportunity to pause and reflect and say, okay, what about that experience did I enjoy?
Yeah.
What gave me energy? What do I want to repeat? What do I want to avoid? And that just going through life and playing multiple levels, like I mean, old school, like 8-bit games, like they're all kind of set, right? So you play a life and then you die and you're like, okay, well, I got to avoid and jump over this turtle.
You're like, start over.
Yeah. And just like, okay, I'm going to like do this thing, or I'm going to try this new thing. And that's sort of how I've like sort of looked at my career. Intentionally and non-intentionally. Intuitively almost.
I think the fact that you did it intentionally is saying a lot. I mean, I like that you mentioned that you were focused on what gave you energy, because I think sometimes it's not even myself can I necessarily say that I made most of my moves based on energy. I just kind of made my moves very logically. But so after Simple Habit, like, how did you then you know,
so
shift gears?
That was I mean, I was done with the whole early stage.
How long were you there?
About a year, just under a year.
Okay. A year can feel like a long time.
It was the longest year of my life. And it was the most unhealthy for my physical and mental health, being at a mental health company. I was overweight, like poor anxiety, like it was just not good for my like human side. And so I was looking for a later stage company that was hopefully in a countercyclical industry, and I just wanted more stability at that time.
Countercyclical.
Yeah. So there's some businesses that do well in recessions.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
So business cycles and just
gotcha.
When everything's great.
It's
great.
Yeah. It's less of the ups and downs.
Yes, exactly. Or when things are down, like business actually okay.
Maybe even better.
And so the opportunity of the Black Tux came around, and it kind of hit that bill, right? It was an established brand, had great product market fit, great product. Rental businesses do well in recessions typically.
Is curious, have most of your roles been kind of like inbounds?
Yes.
Gotcha. And do you feel like they just always came at the right time?
I guess.
Because you're like, it's like, oh, the story just makes sense.
Sure. No, I mean, actually, let me see. No, Touch of Modern, I had to get for
that one. Yes.
Yeah, because I had to cast a wide net, and I just took literally the first job I got an offer for. But yeah, everything else was Parachute. I got connected via Upfront, one of the VCs, but I applied for that.
Gotcha. Okay, not to derail. Okay, so Black Tux came around.
Fit the bill. Was great. Joined in February of 2020, and then
fun year.
And then did not count on the world shutting down and events kind of stopping, and 95% of revenue evaporating overnight.
Wow.
That was.
There goes your countercyclical relaxed job.
I did not count on that. I mean, there's really no lessons to learn from that one. Like, that was just bad luck, and I mean, it just is what it is. Unfortunately, it was a short stint that I really couldn't predict. But there was some good of it. Got me to LA.
I was gonna say, like, is it Black Tux in LA?
Santa Monica.
Gotcha.
So got me thinking about moving here, and I love LA now, and
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think
SoCal.
that's kind of what it did its job.
Yeah, it did its job. Well, and
It was a good time to spend during, well, I mean, I guess people have mixed opinions, but it was nice weather.
yeah, no,
Stay inside, be next to the water,
I mean, stay on the west side. The
Yeah.
weather's great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it got me introduced to the at Parachute, and that was a great 3-year run.
Yeah.
And
And Parachute was like what size? Like what was the like
Parachute,
parameters?
that one was there was less intentionality there. It was more
Just need to move to the next thing.
I just need to move to the next thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And great brand.
Yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of these brands are kind of in a similar like space, which is that they are lifestyle but more premium.
Yeah.
Even Tonal is like a premium customer.
Yeah.
Home gym,
Yeah. No, I think that's the common denominator is if you're looking for competitive advantages, or at least when I think about joining businesses, there's got to be some reason, right? Like
Yeah.
first half of my career in automotive manufacturing, the competitive advantage was being cheaper,
Correct.
being
Yes.
more durable, being like
Right.
there has to be something that
Yeah.
because you have some technology, whatever, performance.
Yeah.
In the consumer space, the biggest competitive advantage you can have is a strong brand.
Right.
Right. So you have something that people know what they stand for. It's a shortcut for people to make their purchasing decisions. And starting with the Black Tux and just going forward, having a strong brand is such a competitive advantage for consumer businesses where a lot of companies they may have a brand that's recognizable,
Yeah.
but may not stand for anything.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I love about that is that I think about, especially when it comes to lifestyle, I think about shopping as a form of self-expression.
Absolutely.
Right. And so when it comes to self-expression, you want to find companies that make you feel like you.
Absolutely.
When you're doing whatever that is. And so it's very important for those brands to be able to tell stories that resonate with customers.
Absolutely.
And like it comes in multiple forms, which is like, one, how do you tell the story in an authentic way? And then two, how does somebody actually get the story? Like just given how noisy and loud and how many brands there are, it's like, how do you, and then how can you get an organization to fit the brand? Because no matter what you say, like everyone has to be behind it such that customer service, the product itself, they all have to like feel like what you're selling. And so it's a lot about like, how do you create a persona that can scale?
Absolutely. And this may sound sort of dissonant from a quantitative engineer, analytical, like growth person. But like brand is absolutely, when done right.
Yeah.
So brand is not like your logo and your like color palette and your font. Like the brand has to do everything that you just said. And that was actually something at Touch of Modern that was able to sort of experience and see firsthand.
Yeah.
It helps with acquisition. It makes your ads more performative. Yes. But the most important thing is that it focuses an organization around what's the reason for being, right? It's not to just sell stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's a very superficial. And I think a lot of retailers just try and sell stuff and they'll do whatever it takes to get more sales.
Yeah.
Typically it's discounting.
Yeah.
And so Touch of Modern was a flash sales business. Like the original thought was it has to be 70% off. Otherwise it won't sell.
Yeah.
And what we realized when we sort of explored it and had these hypotheses, it wasn't the discount. Yes, it's helpful, but it was exploring and finding new product. The novelty, the interestingness of the story of why this is something I should care about.
Yeah.
That's what gave Touch of Modern a reason for being. Once we figured that out and we crystallized it, and we tested this because we have to, we removed the 70% off of our ads.
For everything or just the ads?
Just removed it completely. Did not mention the discount at all.
Wow.
Up front.
Yeah.
No change whatsoever.
Yeah.
We had to actually be on sale for people to buy it. So like it was still an important part of the business.
I see.
But that wasn't the reason for being of why people came to the website.
Yeah. It makes total sense. You don't lead with the discount, you lead with the product.
Yeah. And the once we realized that, where did we focus our efforts and resources internally? It was the buyers. We had to invest in the buyers, in the merchandising, in the sourcing of these interesting products. That was the core reason for being for that.
You know what's such an interesting challenge, I think, is that neither of us are merchandisers, but we work at e-commerce, or we've worked at e-commerce physical type companies where the product itself is not necessarily what we control. Really. Although, different aspects of the product, the marketing of it, the digital consumer touch point of it. But it's kind of like it's a very sort of like just fascinating thing that I think about a lot, because I think that naturally when you are like a holistic thinker and ideally everyone thinks this way, like is an owner and thinks about like what are we selling to the customer, even if you are not the merchandiser.
That's not as a common of a skill as I would say. Like,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
ideal of
yeah.
where I think I feel like I am.
Yes, yes.
And then you clearly are.
Yeah.
I would not say everyone.
Well,
is like
yeah.
that.
No, I think for sure. I think that that's kind of like what I would hope that people would
Yes.
be. I think it's very challenging. But it's I don't know how to think about it exactly, but I think that and I'm almost asking myself in terms of like, oh, why do I gravitate to these types of businesses? You know, like wouldn't I want to be in a business where I own the product end to end? But you know, like there's a part of me where it's like I think a physical product is uniquely challenging, but also uniquely exciting because it's something that people can truly experience in a much deeper way. And it doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, like you can still tell the story end to end and be you're not the person actually merchandising the product, but you know, understanding how it's perceived to the consumer and what the experience is like, being able to think like that is very valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where we
No,
went, but
like-
you just inspired that thought.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think having control over everything,
Mhm.
there was a lot of, I've worked with some amazing colleagues
Yeah.
throughout my career, people that I deeply respect
Yeah.
and have learned a lot from,
Mm-hmm.
and others who not so much, and who I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, and I can still do a better job than you. But I bring that up because I think ideally, you should always be working with the former, right? People that you can learn from, that you gel with, that you have, that you trust implicitly, and that the sum of the parts are greater, right?
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you own everything, right? You have to like give away your cheese. It's a business book. Anyway, the metaphor is you have to give away your cheese so that you can have other people to work with and collaborate with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you own everything, then you have no one to give your cheese to.
when you can you clarify what you mean by, because by the way, when I say own everything, I mean like the product is like more like you have more influence over the product itself, the end product. But I guess actually if you're, you know, I think if we think of e-commerce as it's a product that has multiple dimensions.
Yeah.
You know, then
yeah. Well, I mean, I was actually thinking of it more from like the concept of leadership, right?
Okay.
So like from an individual contributor, like you own your work product.
Oh, I see.
Right. And you start managing a team, then you have like a function or
Gotcha.
whatever. But at some point, like just delegation, like you
Yes.
can't own everything,
Yeah,
and
for
you,
sure.
you end up having to be more of a servant leader rather than like
Mhm.
like you are not judged by your individual output to a thing. And so that ownership requires that you
Yes.
give away your cheese in order to be able to like
I want to
foster.
dig into that for a second.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about how you feel like you approach leadership, and what do you feel like have been sort of defining elements of like how you've evolved as a leader.
Yeah. I
These
mean,
were not part of your prep questions.
no, well,
You were just riffing now.
it's a common interview question, and I've done a couple of those, right? So
Dude, I don't want the interview. I don't want the canned interview.
it's not canned.
Should I ask it a different way?
No, it's like everything, it's a function of my experience, right? And my experience is not typical, and hence like my approach to leadership is different because I've done things like managed UAW, like hourly manufacturing, like blue collar jobs, to most recently like very like well educated white collar executives. And those approaches require different styles and techniques depending on what is contextually appropriate, right? So not only like who you're managing or who you're leading, but what is the situation in which you have to lead?
Yeah.
Is it a turnaround situation?
Yeah.
Requires like quick, decisive decision making?
Yeah.
Is it things are kind of going great and you just need to make it incrementally better? Getting more collaborative, getting more buy-in, getting more like bringing people along is more important. If it's a sort of situation where it's unclear what's next, then this is the charting a path. It's like setting a vision and a direction, and then communicating that. So it's like kind of a mixture of all those different styles, depending on where the business and where the industry is. Yeah. Is how I've learned to think about.
Yeah. Do you feel like trying to ask you a harder question?
Bring it on.
Do you no, I'm not gonna go to I think like, do you feel like there's been like, what would you say is sort of like some like if you were to see like here, actually I'll take a step back. In my leadership journey, I feel that every time I make the leap to the next sort of whatever I'm learning, it's tangibly felt for myself and, across the organization. Like each time I up level, it's felt. And so I'm curious, like, I mean, I think what you said makes sense. I think that these are the types of things that like you could either feel very gradually and you just start to like go, okay, like we're in a turnaround situation, like I'm going to be decisive. And then, the other approach. But were there like specific moments where you were like, oh, something just clicked and you were just like, okay, this element, maybe
Oh,
it's a
no,
little
absolutely
bit,
not.
yours is very gradual.
Oh, no. It
Or
was,
all,
it was,
everything all at once.
no, it was very painful every single time.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm saying that now because I have the sort of benefit of 20 plus
Hindsight.
years of
Yeah.
hindsight and learning, right?
Yeah.
But every one of those situations was it felt very uncomfortable,
Right. Okay.
right? Anytime something changes, it's deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's actually where you grow, right? Because
Yeah.
there's a trade-off between comfort and growth.
Yeah.
And because I've been so deeply uncomfortable for so long, I feel like I've grown so much. And if I had the benefit of really just tremendous mentors and executive coaching, and so I've learned from a lot of people that have been really helpful in shaping my leadership journey. But no, absolutely, what you felt like, it is a marked change when something changed. Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
your context and you're using if you're using the turnaround playbook and then things
Yeah.
start going well and you keep using that same book,
Right.
things don't go well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or vice versa. You try and bring people along, but like
Yeah.
things are going south.
Yeah.
You need to change your style
Yeah.
because it's contextually appropriate, and you need to communicate it so people aren't
Right.
like,
What do you
caught
think
with
is like the
whiplash.
most uncomfortable break that you had? Like I thought this way,
Oh yeah,
and then now I think this way.
there's a couple.
Okay.
Um,
And we can trade because I have a couple.
yeah.
too.
I'll go with an experience at Parachute
Okay.
where I was brought on as the entire part of the sort of interview process was, we really love your sort of approach. We aren't doing the growth specific part of the job really well. It's like you need to like come in and be a change agent and just do these things.
Yeah.
Like that's why we're bringing you on to be this change agent and do these
Yeah.
different things. But the business was doing well, right? And so
Okay, so turn around in the wrong
yeah,
moment.
turn around the wrong moment, right?
Yeah.
And so the style that I brought and the way I showed up to was just dissonant with what the organization
Yeah.
felt, and I rubbed people the wrong way, like deeply. I had like, yeah, it was just a very
You guys
uncomfortable.
doing it all wrong.
It was no, I mean,
Just kidding.
it wasn't like that, but like it was just there were some ruffled feathers,
Yes.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And working with an executive coach and just understanding that wasn't the right
Yeah.
approach, I was just authentic about it. I was like, hey, sorry, like I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but like authentically just showed up. This is my intent. This is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I was able to repair a lot of those relationships and
Yeah.
left with some actually really close personal friendships where previously it was like very antagonistic. So that was like just one example of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, this wasn't the first one, maybe the second inflection. But I think at one point, because we had gone through a couple of cycles of different leadership, and I think I kind of naturally grew my influence in the organization just because I was there for so long, and so I had a lot of relationships and a lot of institutional knowledge. And I think that one of the things that I was doing well at the time was visual representation of things. Like, there was a lot of talking, and I was just like, I literally like thought comes here and it goes out the door, and I was just seeing the same conversations happening over and over again. So I got really good at like lo-fi visual presentation that said, okay, this is the change. This is in red. It's a really ugly red. Like focus on the lo-fi change right here.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, I even learned that from folks who were like reporting to me. Like, we had one product manager who had come from Nike who just was very influential. And I think just like a natural influential, shout out to Matt. I'll give him a shout out. And, I was like, let's make my shit really ugly. Not that his shit was ugly, but he was very lo-fi. He wouldn't mind, and be like, okay, this is the only thing that's changed from A to B. And I would focus on that. So that was one thing I was doing well. But there was a period of time where there was so much complexity in the business. And I think I was getting very ambitious of where I felt the future was. So I put a lot of time and energy into like what I felt, like where we were going. But I also, I think, kind of hit like this like burnout stage because I was like trying to share these things, but like because I was working bottoms up. And so every piece of the organization, like they would like kind of work together, and then all of a sudden everyone would shift that direction because the center of gravity shifted that way. And then this thing was just kind of left like floating. And so the problem, because I was very, I have a very driver type personality. I just went in harder. And so I would like put together decks and materials, docs, and it would all just like go to shit, and I would actually like, I'm going to end this, go too long, but, I think that, I started being too verbose in what I was sharing and very frustrated that nobody could see all the work that I was doing.
Yeah.
And I think that not necessarily a mentor per se, but I did kind of start to, this is something that I share, which is like, I was introduced to the pyramid principle, very like classic book on communication. But for me, it was actually extremely helpful because there was so much information that I was trying to share. And pyramid principle essentially says like, structure the logic, be able to like group everything into their logical categories, and then abstract it upwards such that you can actually present to someone at its like very core essence level, and then you can go down if needed. And so for me, that was actually very critical in saying, look, like I told like little Lucy, I was like, Lucy, I know you did the work, and I appreciate and I see you for that work, but you're not going to show that work right now. You're going to show them the answer, and then you're going to pause, and you're going to let them ask questions, and you're going to not chase their validation or affirmation. You are going to just stand your ground and, like let them come to you, really. So I think that for me was a big trajectory shift because it helped me clear my mind, and it also gave myself validation because I was like, you know what, like I'm not here to like, nobody cares about the effort, unfortunately, but you can see your own effort.
That's that whole principle is kind of politics. Like that's what politicians need to do.
Yeah.
And politics has like some negative connotations because of politicians.
Yes.
But like essence, that's in essence what do you need to do? You need to take really complicated, nuanced things that are going on in the world and distill down to something that people can understand and get bought into and just follow.
Yeah. Can I tell you something so super funny? Literally podcast this morning. This woman was talking about, I'm trying not to figure out how to say this without getting political, but she was talking about how she was like, like we need to be able to communicate this policy. Like, what do people want? Do they like, I don't think they want a 50-page document on such and such and such. And I'm like, yeah, they don't want that. And they're like, but I think what they want is for us to, communicate about how we will approach things. And I was like, actually, yes, but also could you just give me a 5-pointer on your 50-page doc? Like, like it's not that you can't give the policy at all. Like you can give the policy, just give it like tight.
It's
I'm like, how do you not see there's a middle between the two of these things?
I mean, not to get political, but the two debates between like the presidential and the VP debate.
Yeah.
Like one was very like technocratic, like policy heavy.
Right.
And
there's nothing in the middle.
There's nothing in the middle.
Yeah.
It's like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
That no substance whatsoever.
Yes.
And then deep into just really neat, nuanced policy stuff that something in the middle would be nice.
And honestly, like this is what I believe is the true hybrid between the seeming dichotomy between creativity and the technical, because what I really see creativity is the ability to connect to humans, like and the ability to come up with things that are just patterns that have not been created because you understand how to connect with your humanity as why am I even creating something, and so and then on the technical side it's like, okay, this is the actual it of like what it is. And so the magic is when you are able to figure out how to connect the it to the human connectivity. And there's not this like split between like just emotion and love and creativity and flow and like technical skill, The key is the translation, which is how do I translate this thing that is complicated over here to something that is actually useful?
The way I've always thought about creativity and why I'm not concerned about AI as much, like certain jobs, like, it's going to be like bank tellers, like, or whatever.
Yes. Anything that humans probably shouldn't really be
exactly
spending their time on.
If it's dirty, dull, or dangerous.
Yes.
Anyway, I think most people go through life relying on pattern matching, right? Like they have an experience. I think like my whole career, we've just talked about, I have all these experience and I pattern match to that. I think creativity is coming up with something that isn't pattern matched to something existing. And therefore, like that's the human element of creativity. AI is all based on existing patterns.
Yes, derivation.
Right? And so there is no creativity because their whole, like some people may say hallucinations is creativity, like, but like anyway, I can't speak enough about that.
Yeah, I will say that some level of remixing is still kind of like can create something new, but so rewind that. I'll say, like, I think there is creative elements that will certainly come out of AI. simply because when you take the world and you take the patterns, there's like new stuff that maybe you didn't realize, and you
Sure.
think about something different. But that said, like, I think that at the end of the day, and this is something that Chase and I talk about a lot. Chase, I never, Chase is always at the podcast, but third party.
The guy behind the camera.
The guy behind the camera, who will soon have his own fan club because, okay, he'll cut that a lot, whatever. Is that like the creatives who will be most empowered will be those who know how to leverage AI, and not only for speed of work that you don't need to do, but also for inspiration from which your human creativity can layer on top of that.
I mean, I think AI is going to be another revolution, and like every revolution, it's going to be a lot of change, and change is uncomfortable, and we're going to see what happens, I guess.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll just also add to that is I'm optimistic.
Okay.
And my hope is that we will all be able to connect more deeply with our human selves and be able to communicate and translate better with each other, because translation is a lot of work, and hopefully AI can do a lot of that translation for us.
Yeah.
Anyway, so next time I see you, I'll be, maybe speaking in Portuguese with my AI translator.
Plugged into the Matrix.
Plugged into the Matrix, unplugged. Check it out on Spotify.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See.
Oh yeah. That was. I like that video.
You like that video? I was actually surprised that you watched that video to the end, because when you were like, "Oh, the girl with the thing plugged in the back of her head," I was like, "Wow, he watched it to the end." It's one of those sort of like visually kind of creepy videos.
It was not what I expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you expect?
I mean, I was.
You were like, is something gonna jump out?
No, I mean, I was multitasking, and so I was like, let's like groove into the music, looking over, and then I was like, whoa, what's going on? And then
it should have been one of those, I don't know if you ever had this, but like when I was younger, people would sometimes we'd like, as a friend, like we'd send each other these videos, and you'd think it was like, they'd be like, oh, stare at the video, and then at the very end, like some freaking like ghost thing pops out of it, and like literally I would die every single time. I'd be like, I cannot handle jump scares.
Not a fan either.
Okay, so let's segue a little bit. I want to talk about your career break, and I also just want to talk about like, we talked a little bit about energy and flow, and like, so I want to hear, one, like, how are you spending your time? And I know you just went to Bali, so I want to hear about that. And then two, where are you getting your energy these days?
Yeah. So the trip to Bali, and it wasn't just Bali. We went around the world.
Oh, amazing.
So it was a family. It was a intentional prioritizing family moment. So my parents are still in Brazil, and so I had to spend some time with them. They're sort of going through some health stuff, and so wanted to prioritize that. And spend time with my kids during summer break. They're getting to an age where they're still.
How old are they now?
13 and 10.
Okay.
And so still like to spend time with the fogey old parents. Not going to last very long, and it was important to just not miss out on that. And so we took this trip, no iPads, tried to unplug as much as possible.
Wow.
And I was anxious about that, but it was absolutely the right decision. Like, it was such a great time.
Yeah.
And sort of really sort of brought perspective in terms of I think international travel is super important. I've never been to that part of the world, and really being immersed in a predominantly Hindu country. And so I learned a lot about sort of the religion, and while it may not resonate directly, like spiritually and whatnot, I think there's a lot of aspects of it that resonated with me in terms of finding balance, and the different aspects of your life that you should be okay with investing in, right?
Yeah. How long were you in Bali?
A month.
Gotcha.
Just in Thailand. Thailand and Bali.
Thailand, Bali. Okay.
Yeah, for about a month.
And did you, like, what kind of things did you do while you were there?
So try to do it all, right?
Yeah.
So we did the cultural with like visiting the temples and doing that.
Yeah.
We did the nature stuff, and sort of the hiking and the waterfalls, and then beach stuff and the snorkeling and swimming with manta rays, and really tried to do as much as possible. And,
yeah. Where do you feel like some of the maybe balance stuff came in? Like, did it happen like while you were gradually?
Oh no, it was very much the temple and the cultural stuff.
Okay.
So I'm still wearing this little thing, and it's 3 colors, so red, black, and white. And it symbolizes sort of the balance between the 3 aspects of your life. I'm gonna butcher and totally not do the religious. Yeah. I do not claim to be a theology or deep into that, but like my takeaway from it is the balance between the artha, which is like your accumulation of resources. So
Okay.
you work to accumulate resources to,
Makes sense.
like, you have to accumulate resources to be able to pursue the things that you want to do.
Correct. Yes.
There's the pursuit of pleasure, the kama, right? And it could be just whatever gives you pleasure in life, right? It doesn't have to be hedonistic, but it just things that you enjoy doing. And then there's the word that I'm going to butcher, but like the something that gives you meaning, right? So either it's in the pursuit of like the higher being, enlightenment, or it's whatever gives you meaning, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
It's almost like the first one feels like to me the strategy portion, which is how do I get the means to which I can then effectuate the other two.
Yeah.
And the other two are sort of the fruits of life.
Yeah.
And but you don't want to be completely just pleasure and hedonism, because it's kind of like, you
Empty.
know, empty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like if you can enjoy the pleasures, but also, you
Yeah.
know, feel like there's something that's connecting you more deeply to humanity in some way.
Yeah.
It's a nice little balance of the three.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the part that resonated with me, because I felt prior like guilt almost in terms of doing things that are just like, whatever, you go out to an expensive meal and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that was so good. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I
Yeah.
spent so much money on this
Yeah.
dinner,
The
right?
American has really
whatever, right?
Puritanness.
But like
Yeah.
there's, as long as it's in balance, right? And
Yeah.
you don't go all the way into
Yeah.
hedonism, and then you're a workaholic and whatnot. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's I actually derive enjoyment from the work I do, certain aspects of the work I do, right? And then, but it all has to be tied to
Yeah.
to meaning, right? So like Viktor Frankl,
Yeah.
and like the search for meaning, like
Yeah.
humans need something that they like, the meaning of life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's empty and it's deeply unsatisfying.
Yeah. I have a tattoo that I got after I went through a period of burnout. And after I emerged from it, it was like waking up from like a deep slumber. And I got a tattoo that basically is here, and it says "Only the Poets." And it comes from a speech, but the main thing was that one of the most important parts of life is to create a story out of it. And the poets know that the best, because they realize that the art of living is being able to create meaning where, you know, from your own lens of your experience and how you're, you know, otherwise, like, it just, what is it?
Yeah.
You know, like, and you're able to create that unique meaning for your life, and that meaning generally something that connects to something that's your deeper energy.
Yeah.
But
That's beautiful.
yeah. So I really love that, and that really connects with me a lot. So I guess one question I have is, do you feel like what do you feel like is kind of like some of your sort of driving purposes at this point?
Yeah. I mean, so the purpose and the meaning,
Yeah.
at least mine is my kids, right?
Yes,
And my family.
of course.
So
Yes.
they're like the cliche like moment of like holding the baby.
Yeah.
That was not my moment.
Oh really? Okay.
Newborns are like scary. They're like alien looking. No, that was not it. No, but
You could be a comedian. You like faked me out on that one.
no, it's when my daughter smiled at me for the first time,
Yeah.
and then my son too, right? Like, so I don't think I was meant to be a like parent of babies. I don't like babies.
Interesting.
But I love my kids.
Yes,
obviously.
yes, that's what my mom says.
Yeah, babies are cool. Especially, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
so happy my kids are older now.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like everything I do is to model good behaviors and try
Yeah.
and like provide and do all those things,
Yes. Yes.
while having fun doing it.
Yeah.
Which is now I've learned very possible,
Yeah.
especially coming from this trip in Bali, just hanging out with them. We were in a beach club in Bali. Sounds so bougie, but
Where? Oh, a beach club.
yeah, it was this beach club, and we were just lying on these like really comfy like beanbag things on the beach with like I had a cocktail, my daughter had a mocktail.
Yeah.
We're just like hanging out. Just she was reading her Kindle, and it was just so fun.
Yeah.
And then hanging out with my son and doing like he loves to do like all the activities.
One way to almost think about it in some ways is I almost think about it as like the children. I mean, a lot of times when you have a child, like they're there to help you remember what the energy and the meaning is, and even the pleasure aspect. And they just haven't learned the leverage part. So they have to go and learn the leverage part, and then they're like, "Oh shoot!" They have to relearn the meaning and pleasure part.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
kind of funny.
I feel like formal education is meant to like squash and kill like everything that's like.
It's so funny. Chase was just saying that today.
Really? Wise man. That's why you're gonna get your fan club. But and then you have to relearn that. And,
Yes. Yeah.
so it's taken 40 plus years for me to relearn those things. And
Yeah. I think it's almost natural part of the journey though, because you almost have to do that in order to really appreciate the meaning. And it doesn't have to be like a huge long time. But I think that there's a little bit of that getting lost in the journey and then having to come out of it. That's sort of, I feel like, part of the journey in a way. Are there other things that kind of come to mind when you think about meaning or purpose?
I think just going back to the whole phrase of like trying to be helpful.
Which is oftentimes the natural areas of meaning. Like, where is it drawing you?
Yeah, like just I think being unhelpful is just deeply just like, if I'm going to be unhelpful, like I'd rather just like exit and remove from the situation.
Yeah.
But just like not having an impact whatsoever, I feel can be even worse.
Yeah.
And if you're not helpful and if you're like you have no impact, then that is the literal definition of not having meaning, right?
It's literally the definition of like, what's the point of working?
Yeah, exactly, right. And so, and not even just that, but like living, right? Like if you don't have an impact and you're going to be like dust, and I'm not super spiritual in terms of afterlife and all that kind of stuff, but like we have hopefully 80 plus years on this earth, that you should have some positive impact in some way, shape, or form. How big, how small, how much, that's up to us to decide. And so,
which I also love, because I think that it's important to recognize that like we can decide that.
That is the only thing that we have in our control. Is how we choose to spend our time, and hopefully we spend our time in a way that can balance those three things, right? Because you can't just you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others.
Yes.
And you can get much more leverage in the impact you have if you have means.
Right.
To be able to
exactly. Okay. Since we're I'm sure, over time, and Chase is thinking about editing now. Just kidding. We don't edit anything. I'm going to go to, I'm going to do a couple closing questions, and then I'm going to do a couple rapid fire that I didn't share with you.
That's great.
Okay. So closing questions. What would you say is a contrarian opinion that you hold?
I don't know how contrarian this is, because I actually saw Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, share this in a speech that he gave.
I think I might know the one.
Yeah, I wish pain or discomfort on everyone.
Oh, not that one, but probably in a similar vein. I think he was talking about torture.
I mean, just it's okay to be uncomfortable. It's okay to go through pain, because I feel like so much growth can come out of it, as long as it's framed in a way that there are lessons to be learned from it, right?
Yes.
And there's like, again, I'm butchering the Chinese proverb, but you have to taste bitter in order to be able to understand sweet. And having I wish everyone pain so that they can actually truly understand what it is to be sweet, because the absence of that, you're going to be entitled. You're not going to truly appreciate the blessings that you may have.
Yeah. I love that, because I think that, like, part of the beauty of the human experience is to have the spectrum of emotions, and each one is not as vibrant as it is without the others. I really like the anyways, okay, sorry, not going to go into that, but also I think that it's helpful if you have an outlet for it, because I think that the important thing is to also not suppress it and just be able to experience it and feel it. Like,
well, I mean, it's what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So don't don't die.
Just
don't die.
Don't die, and don't suppress it.
Yeah.
Just don't blow up in public spaces. Okay. What is a future trend that you predict?
Oh man, I'm a terrible, like, I don't know. This is
we won't hold you to it. We'll just call you up, next year and be like, so Ian, that prediction.
I don't know. Dodgers will win the World Series. Like, I don't know. Like, I know you're going with like I have no.
I wish I could comment on that, but I have no commentary on this one.
No, okay. That's a terrible. I'm terrible with futures.
Okay, what's like a future e-commerce trend that you would predict?
There's going to be a lot less players in the market.
For brands or
brands.
Okay.
Brands.
And because of
consolidation. So e-commerce, like we talked about, it's a channel, not a business model. And there are too many businesses out there that are counting on it being a business model. Capital's going to run out. Competition's going to consolidate. Amazon's going to take over a lot of that wallet share. And there's just a lot of businesses that just have no reason.
What do you think?
Long term.
What do you think would make a brand stand out?
strong point of view in a brand.
Very strong point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have a strong brand. You have to have a reason for being of why you exist.
Yes.
And just because you're like
because the thing that's hard to replicate is somebody can replicate utility like that.
Yeah.
But it's very hard for them to replicate the persona, the personality, the experience, the tone,
that's differentiated.
That's differentiated.
Right. So if you think about especially in the DTC space,
right.
We have a strong brand. We stand for sustainability. It's like, no, you're virtue signaling, right? we stand for DEI. It's like, no, you're virtue signaling. Like that's not a brand. Like that's not a point of view. That you're just virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And there's too many businesses out there that their brand is exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah. The only slight pushback I would just have is I think, it's also about how well you do it. And like, I think that like, if you do it in a way that could be sort of considered part of the noise and it's almost like too obviously compared to everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, if you're North Face, you stand for sustainability. Like, great.
Do you feel like North Face will get consolidated?
No. Oh. That's a strong brand.
Oh, okay. Got it. That's an example. Gotcha.
That's a brand that will probably stay around, but like all the other ones that like claim to be for sustainability.
Yeah. I think if it's shallow, it's like maybe if you were the first in a sea of nobody, but like now it's like, okay, everyone's jumping on that bandwagon. You need to like, either you need to be the first in that bandwagon or you need to jump on a new bandwagon.
And you need to authentically live that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, if you could dream up something to create, what would it be?
I'm working on that right now.
Oh, okay. So is this combined with the what's next for you?
Yeah. So I am exploring a lot of different paths for what I want to do in my next chapter.
Okay.
I am looking. So anyone have a interesting executive role for me? I'm on the market. But in parallel, I have thought about just different business ideas, business ventures.
Do you want to stay in e-comm or you want to do something different? Like, what are you feeling? Doesn't matter?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
And it's more, I have a thesis that depends on your ambition, right? So I don't need to be a billionaire. I don't even need to be a centimillionaire. Like I just have.
These are very important things to establish for yourself.
I just have a number that I want to hit that's not that big.
Yeah.
And once I hit it, I'm good. I can retire. I can provide for my family, and I have acquired enough resources to make the impact I want to do in the world.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of businesses that can do that.
Yeah.
That don't require a lot of capital.
I see.
And that may not be super sexy.
Yeah. So for you, it's more about getting the business that will attain the financial capital,
the resources
to what is that impact that you're looking for?
Well, so provide for my family.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, just have them be able to choose to do the things that that give them meaning without having to worry about, like, their balance will be more skewed to the other two.
Yeah.
Because they won't have to worry about the resource resources.
Right. Yes.
I don't need like $1 billion because that could go into very dangerous like entitlement issues.
Right.
Yes. But if I can provide so that they can choose a career path that today's
just positions them for whatever.
I'll give some examples. There's some professions today that the market for whatever reason does not compensate well at all, but are super important.
Yeah.
Teaching, for example.
Yes.
Incredibly important profession that just pays horribly.
Yeah.
And if I can provide an opportunity so that if that's what they choose to do, they can pursue that and not have to worry about like living the life that they want to.
Yeah.
That's kind of my goal.
Yeah. I would love to try to figure out how to take a lot of the careers that have outsized impact and how do you subsidize those so that more people can enter those
There's
schools.
A lot of Andrew Yang had a whole theory on that. Like, I don't know if I buy his policies, but like, it's a worthwhile like endeavor.
Right. Okay. Last closing question. What does your dream day look like? Feel like today?
No. So, I mean, we talked about it off camera a little earlier. It's, I've found even though I am personally an introvert, I do get a lot of energy from having interesting conversations and solving problems. Right. Yeah. So this was great. Like having like just interesting conversation gives me energy. Being able to collaborate with people to solve a common problem. It doesn't have to be a work problem, but just something, right? Like just figuring out stuff. Like during the pandemic, me and one of my best friends, we couldn't go out to bars or go out anywhere, right? So we tackled how can we make cocktails at home and recreate the experience at home because we were stuck at home. Yeah. And we just
I like that better than baking.
The sourdough thing, it was so instead of sourdough,
your house is just cocktails.
It is a lot. But that we just kind of worked on like tweaking recipes and based on our flavor profiles, like we get the book, but then it's like, oh, that's a little too sweet for our palate. Right. And we just kind of just riffed on that. And that's a problem that we solved. That's not in the resource allocation. That was very much in the this is fun to do. This is fun to do. And but like not that I'm going to be making cocktails every day, but
Yeah.
learning new
Are
skills.
you a morning person or an evening person?
Very much a morning person.
Okay. So do you like put certain activities in the morning versus evening?
Yeah, I'm useless after 7 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Like I'm brain dead and
creative flow.
oh yeah, it's I'm not solving any deep problems after 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pull up the quick questions. Sorry, 1 second. Chase, how are we doing?
Great. Amazing.
Are you asleep?
No, I just came up with an idea based on the teacher thing.
Oh, he's coming up with ideas over there. Why don't I have these rapid fire? Oh, okay. All right. Ready? Okay. What's your favorite game and why? And it could be anything. It could be like a video game. It could be like hopscotch. It could be like poker. Anything. The game of life.
So there was a card game that we brought on our trip to Bali, and it's called. We did bring that as well. Taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza. And it's just a really simple game that has pictures of taco, cat, goat, and it's just a really simple.
I thought it was goat cheese.
No, it's like goat and then a block of cheese and then a pizza.
Okay, gotcha.
And anyway, it's a super simple game that played with you play with kids.
Yeah.
That's kind of a speed game, but we played a lot as a family, and we had layovers and we had like all these like just missed our flights and whatnot. But there's so many good memories of just playing this really silly kids card game.
Can you give us like the 1 minute rules?
Oh, the rule. You have a stack of cards that you can't see, and you take turns flipping it. But you have like everyone has to say taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza in order. Whenever the actual card matches what people are saying, you have to slap it.
Oh,
so
the cards are actually goat cheese.
There's a picture of a taco, picture of a cat.
It's like Egyptian rat race / Egyptian rat screw, but for kids.
Yes. I guess.
I love slapping card games.
Yeah, it's a slapping card game.
It's my favorite.
And then there's like these there's pictures of a narwhal.
Yeah.
And
that's funny.
groundhog, and then if that card comes up, you have to do this before you slap. So you have all these like.
That's great.
Yeah.
Who is this game by? Maybe one of the big. Who knows? Okay. What's something that you smile at when you scroll past it in socials? If you're on socials.
I hate social. It's so addicting, and like because of the work, I have to like keep. Anyway, I like just silly comedy because I spend so much time looking at like commercials.
Is there like a particular comic that you like?
Stand up.
Stand up.
So I like stand up. I like some of the like slapstick stuff. So there's this couple that just have like water balloons thrown at each other, and they do all these practical jokes in their house.
Oh my god!
I forget what they're called, but it's just silly.
Yeah.
Like they're just their entire account is just them pranking each other.
Pranking each other. Yeah. Do you prank?
No. Not at all.
You're like, I'm too busy to prank, but I'll watch people prank.
I actually hate pranking. Yeah. I'm like vicariously living through it. I would never do that.
You're like, you'd better not do that.
And I would hate it if it was done to me. And so it's like
Have you been pranked?
Not.
Yeah, they're like, don't you dare.
Yeah, no, I'm not a fan.
Okay. If your life was a movie, what genre would it be?
A Wes Anderson, just kind of like weird.
Why is everyone so intellectual?
I don't know. Because it's just like there's like moments of comedy, but it's just like weird. Like what's going on? I don't know what I'm watching here.
Apparently I just meet very artistic cinematic types. Amazing. Okay. I'm gonna give you 5 names. If you could work directly under one of these leaders, who would it be? Bezos, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Sam Altman.
None of the above. So Elon is crazy. Altman, I've heard not so great things.
Interesting.
Bill Gates now different than Bill Gates when he was at Microsoft.
Okay.
Zuckerberg. Like, do I have to pick? Like,
no, you don't.
None of the above. None of the above.
None of the above. What's the least worst?
No, Bezos. Bezos would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I guess.
Actually, I wish I came up with a different, because these were the same questions that I asked before. But why don't we end with, what is your favorite AI tool that you're using, if you're using anything?
Oh, ChatGPT.
What are you using it for?
Anything I have to write. It's so.
Do you journal or do you write?
No.
Or is it for work?
No. Like so, use it to plan our travel itinerary
Oh, okay.
in Bali.
Mm.
If I have to write anything for
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
I've used it to gut check board deck, like agenda items.
Oh, okay.
It's just you can't copy and paste it because
Yeah.
but it just starts and creates structure
Yeah.
that you can edit. It's so much easier to edit than to start like the cold start problem.
Right.
And I've heard that Claude and all these other models can be better in some ways or form,
Yeah.
but
Inertia.
it's
I mean, like, what's the point? I mean, why at some point it's like, why do you need the extra?
yeah,
You know?
it's good enough for
Yeah.
what I need right now.
Right.
Uh,
Familiarity is sometimes just like,
Yeah, and the
speed.
voice feature where it's just like that's
Have you played with the voice
Yeah,
feature?
yeah.
It's crazy.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't gone as far as some people have,
Yeah.
because I'm just waiting for it to consolidate. And, like again, laziness. Just tell me how to use it, and I'll figure out. Like, but it's so powerful.
Yeah. Okay. I'm wondering if there's anything else. What else? Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you would want to talk
Interview
about?
question?
Oh my God, is that also an interview question? Okay, let me not ask that.
Yeah, no. I don't know.
This is not an interview.
No, I know. This is no. It's fun. It's always fun to just talk.
What's another topic that you would like to talk about, if anything? But that was the close of the rapid fire questions. What's your favorite color?
Blue. I don't know.
What's your favorite animal?
Don't have one.
Why not?
Okay, so here's not a rapid fire question, but
Oh yeah, you can also ask me a rapid fire question.
it's a contrarian thing.
Okay.
I have very few favorites in anything.
Oh, interesting.
I said blue just because whatever, but
Yeah, I mean,
actually,
I literally mentally thought you were going to say blue because that's like the default.
it's
answer.
a default, but like it's not actually true.
You're like, why did I say that?
Yeah, no, it's because. So here's my philosophy on things.
Okay. Yes.
Not a rapid fire question whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that there are pros and cons to anything,
Yeah.
and as long as it's a good version of whatever it is, I'm going to enjoy it and appreciate it.
Mm.
So music, food, movies, anything that there is a subjective element to it.
Yeah.
Generally, some people may think that the other whatever is enjoyable.
Mm.
I choose to see that why they would think that, and there are contexts where I would enjoy that. So for music,
Yeah.
I like hip hop, I like pop, I like classical, I like heavy metal, I like
Yeah.
whatever. Like as long as it's the good version of that. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to see like a
Yeah.
shitty like rapper or like a shitty.
You're an
whatever.
appreciator of quality
Anything.
wherever it is.
Yeah. So food, like types of cuisine. I ate that ant from the Amazon. As long as it's a good version of whatever that cuisine is,
Yeah.
I will enjoy it and appreciate it for
I
what it
wonder
is.
where that stems from.
I have no idea. That might
Has that been like your entire life?
pretty much. No. There's very few things that I just don't enjoy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like
It
hard
sounds
pass.
like a real appreciation of quality.
Yeah.
You know?
Like there's shitty versions of everything. So like
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
But the good version of anything
Yeah.
is generally something that I'm
It's like a very good
Yeah.
balanced quality where you're
Yeah.
not like, I have to be spiky in this
Yeah.
in all these things. Like, I can appreciate it for what it is as long as it is the best version of what it is.
Yeah.
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 Very
So like Fear Factor.
Yeah.
Remember that show Fear Factor
yes,
was like
yes. I love watching like people
but all,
uncomfortable situations. I live vicariously through it.
all of those things I just kept on thinking it's like if they like seasoned that better or like prepared it differently, I would totally eat that. But like they just made it in a way that was so unappetizing. I was like, yeah, okay, like that looks gross.
I love the presentation.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
a couple worms.
Just like just saute that over.
Yeah,
Yeah. Add some spices.
Reddit.
Yeah, I mean there's a way to make any of that taste good.
Oh my God. So are you like, is there anything that you don't like? Outside
Probably.
of bad
No,
quality.
probably.
Mm.
I can't.
What's a pet peeve? Again, then we'll end it because now we're
Yeah. I have a lot of them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have anything pithy to say right off the top of my
No
head.
worries. Well, I first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to come and chat with me. I really loved just hearing about your journey, and you've gone through so many different unique experiences and different roles. And also, I think like, even though for you, it sounds like you kind of like evolved through each chapter to figure out what you were interested in, which in and of itself takes a level of intention and reflection. I think throughout that, like there were certain patterns that, you kind of held steady, and, resourcefulness and curiosity. And the last thing that you had, there was one more, you had being helpful.
Helpful,
theme. I think all of those different aspects combined with, I think, the sort of the balance lately that you've been really learning more about yourself, and including, deriving energy from social experiences and figuring out how to pass more leverage on to your family, I think has been really exciting to talk about and learn about, especially, even just talking about the meaning of all of it for you. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And yeah, Ian Young, everybody, and Ian, is if you're lucky enough, you'll cross Ian in his next role, whatever he chooses to do. So thank you again.
Thank you for the kind words.